Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, sports fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with a special Tim May podcast. Special because this is the 32nd anniversary, John Johnson, correct?
Yeah,
of Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson in the Tokyo Dome and changing the boxing world forever. One of the great upsets in sports history, perhaps the greatest upset in sports history. And I've already introduced him. Most people know who this man is, but just for official certification, John, you're John Johnson, right?
Right. That's I'm the John Johnson, like the Ohio State University.
Yeah.
I'm the John Johnson.
That's the
Although
best.
there is a John Johnson too.
That is the best way of putting it. And as we record this at Carsoni's Restaurant up in Northeast Ohio, South Westerville, whatever you want to call it, right? It's just a great place to come for lunch and dinner. And of course, they started stacking the plates just as soon as we started recording this. What do you think about that, John?
Yeah. I know they heard it, they heard what was happening and everything, and they decided to get out of here. But one thing I want to point out, 32 years ago today, we were both in Tokyo.
Yes. I was in the process of losing weight because there was hardly anything there I wanted to eat.
I know. I had the same thing. I eat tuna every meal.
Exactly. Except for that one time when you took me to dinner, took everybody to dinner in the bottom of the restaurant there, a nice restaurant, or bottom of the hotel there, and we all had steak,
And it cost $1,000 or probably more.
Yeah, exactly. Kobe beef don't come cheap, ladies and gentlemen, not even back in 1990. But the reason I got John on there, John was the manager, basically the driving force behind getting that fight set up between Buster Douglas from Westerville, from Columbus, against Mike Tyson, the unbeatable one, made it happen. But before that, John Johnson had another life. You had like 10 or 12 different lives, didn't you? But one of those was serving as basically, you weren't an assistant coach per se on the staff, but you were, in essence,
I was a graduate.
You were a graduate assistant for Woody Hayes back in the mid 70s.
I wasn't a graduate, but I was a graduate.
Yeah, he was a graduate assistant.
With the Fab Four.
Yeah.
With the Fab Four from 72 through 75.
And who were the Fab Four?
Archie Griffin, Brian Bassnagel, Cornelius Green, and Pete Johnson.
Yeah. Boy, John Hicks. Rest in peace, John Hicks.
Yeah, John Hicks on the front. And I tell everybody.
Didn't he make the Fab Four? Go ahead.
Well, but that's just the backfield designation, I think, because if anybody believes you win or lose, it's a line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
And we had great offensive line. We had a great defensive line. We had a great defense.
Yeah.
I mean, man, we had a great defense. All those guys.
Those were silver bullets before the silver bullets ever came along.
They had all hit you.
Yeah.
They had all hit you. I mean, offensively and defensively. And we should have won the national championship. The worst loss was UCLA in the Rose Bowl. Maybe our greatest win is the comeback win up at Michigan. So we were able to go to 75 team, 73 team was great. That's high up at Michigan. We still should have won the national championship because they gave it to somebody that had a loss, but it was early in the season. Maybe Notre Dame. They won the national championship. We should have, but
Archie always said that. Archie Griffin always said he would trade one of his Heismans for Rex Kern's national championship ring.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, those were four great teams in a row, 72 through 75, that matched up with anybody, matched up with any team in history, in my opinion, but didn't get their just due because they didn't get over the top, so to speak. Never lost to Michigan, did tie Michigan, but never lost to Michigan. That was back when that was in vogue, when everybody thought Michigan Hex had been wiped out, and of course, then it came back in the John Cooper era. But obviously, the last several years, the last 2 decades, John, really, Ohio State has held sway against Michigan. Is that hard for you to believe, being a guy who goes back that deep into this history of Ohio State football?
It does, and every year I have a John Hicks call me and said, JJ, I just got out of the hospital, and a lady there asked me if I would help some people that really need help. Will you help me? And I said, sure, brother. And it turned out it was the Umberforth house, And the last 5 years, we've had 500 people show up at Villa Milano, and we've raised over $500,000. And the amazing thing is, John Hicks was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
John Hicks was on auction 24 hours a day, 3 times a week dialysis, and losing his eyesight. And he's saying, JJ, help me help somebody. But we have, and we're continuing on his legend. His legend as a person. Everybody's a person first.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and you're either, I say, you can use your power to do great things, or you can use it to do evil things.
Yeah.
So,
Well, John Hicks, pay forward. That was part of his life. That was part of his legacy.
Yeah.
He's one of the great men I ever had an association with. Forget about whether he was a great football player or not. I want to ask you this: give people one anecdote, one little story from dealing with Woody Hayes during those mid-'70s and stuff. Give me one story that just resonates in your head, besides the idea of if you're on time, you're late. That you just hit me with, because I'm always late.
yeah.
But give me one story that still resonates with you about Woody Hayes.
Well, there's of course several. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
But I want one. Give me one.
We were in. It's hard, but we were in I think spring practice, and one of the coaches came in our afternoon meeting and said that Martha Mitchell had said that President Nixon should resign because John Mitchell, her husband, because of Nixon, and said Nixon should resign. And in the meeting room, we had a phone jack, but there wasn't a phone in there. So actually, I went and got him a phone, and I'm proud to be one of his Gophers. We're very proud.
Yeah.
He got on the phone, and I learned later, because I made phone calls to these guys also, that he called the White House. And when you call there, they just ask you your number, because there's no caller ID or anything.
Yeah.
And you tell them, and I guess they had a way of checking that. But he calls and he says, they answer the White House. You can believe that. And he said, "This is Coach Woody Hayes. Let me talk to the president." And 2 minutes later, Mr. President, you're not going to resign. You understand? You don't care what that person said. That's being, not saying exactly what he said.
Cleaning it up a little.
Yeah. And in my experience, and anyone's experience with him, and with President Nixon and also President Ford, the conversation went, "Yep, you're right, Woody. Yep, you're right, Woody. Yep, you're right, Woody." Yeah. He was a powerful man. And what's great is he used his power to do great things, to help people. I've told everyone, any of you could walk up to Coach Hayes and say, "Coach, I got a problem. I'm hurting, this, that, the other." And bam, like I said, he called President of the United States. He would get help. He was a very compassionate man.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Crazy, but compassionate.
Yeah. Of course, Richard Nixon did resign eventually. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I know he did.
So
I'm sure Coach wasn't happy about
he didn't run the play that Woody Hayes told him to run. And I guess it's my point, but he had a lot of officials throwing flags at him at that point. So he had to do what he had to do. But I want to jump into this. You had a great relationship with Pete Johnson while you were at Ohio State, when you were a GA and stuff. But if you could grab one of those players, we've already talked about John Hicks. If you could grab one of those players from that mid-'70s group of players that you could have with you all of your life, I mean, just as the bestest buddy, who would that have been?
Well, Pete had more of an impact. In the first place, Pete Johnson was the best ever. He was the best ever. They feared him. Watch the game in the Rose Bowl game when we played Southern Cal, and he goes to block one of the defensive ends, and this guy dives into the ground, keep from getting hit.
Yeah.
Nobody could. Pete was the best ever.
Yeah.
Archie was the best ever, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But as you realize, Pete went on and became the Bengals all-time leading rusher and scorer.
Yeah. I still have visions of, I covered the Bengals when they went to the Super Bowl for the first time. And I still have visions of him catching those swing passes from Ken Anderson on a dead run, on the left to right flat and stuff. He was just feared. He ran into a lineman one time and hurt his back because he ran into him at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he was ridiculous, a physical specimen, kind of like Derrick Henry, but didn't get as many carries. But
he retired Jack, the linebacker from Pittsburgh, Jack
Lambert.
Yeah, Jack Lambert. Spit on Archie. Archie came back in the huddle, and Pete said, give me the ball and don't block him. Because Pete gonna win that battle.
Kind of like in the longest yard.
One-on-one with anyone,
And you ran right over him. Yeah.
And I had a special relationship with Pete. I was asked by Coach Hayes to have that special relationship, although I actually already did have. And it turned out, and I pointed out that Pete Johnson was the first black football player at Ohio State University to make academic All-American.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that because you pushed him to do his homework?
Yeah, I went to my classes and then I went to his classes.
Whatever it took, right?
But Pete was a highly intelligent guy.
I keep thinking back to those mid-'70s teams, with this name, image, and likeness thing that players have now.
Oh, wow.
I just keep thinking back to those. I mean, who knows? Probably some of them were benefiting in one form or another, surreptitiously, but who knows what that group could have made? I mean, you're talking about, Corny Green, all these just outstanding just people. I mean, but they were personalities, right? I mean, you could name 100 of them.
Yeah. I think that or think back about with Coach Hayes once. This is also a great story. If you got time to hear another great Coach Hayes story. A player came into his office and said that his mom, he was from New Jersey, his mom had died and he didn't have any money to go home. He didn't have to, he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so Coach Hayes had his secretary, got him an airline ticket, and he gave him money for food, for cab, food, and so on and so forth. And when the guy left, Dick Walker was in the office at the time. And when he left, Coach Hayes got on the phone and called the head of the NCAA. And this is Coach Woody Hayes. I just had a young man come into my office, and his mama died, and told him what happened about giving him the money and stuff. And if he said, and if it happens again tomorrow, I'm gonna do it again. F you guys.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he was.
Never heard that story.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, he said those that NCAA people, they have these conventions and spend $100,000 or whatever at that time.
Yeah, which was a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Still is, my opinion.
And I can't give a kid $5 to go to take his girlfriend to a movie, or go to buy something food wise,
Well, Woody Hayes.
So he'd have been happy about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely would have. Woody Hayes was advocating back in the late 60s, but definitely the 70s for instant replay review of official calls. We all know about the ripping the yard marker down, at Michigan that one year and stuff. But me and a buddy of mine, we talk about all the time about how history would have been changed in all kinds of ways if there had been replay review back when TV first came along. I mean, there were all kinds of missed calls back then, right, John?
Yeah.
Miss spots, miss everything.
The biggest one missed for us was up at Michigan State, and it's another story.
1974.
We're in the dressing locker room after game, and they're making a decision as to whether it was a fumble or not, or whether we scored.
Yeah, let me interrupt. 1974, Levi Jackson went up the right sideline against Ohio State. The go-ahead touchdown for Michigan State. Ohio State came back and drove all the way down to the 1 foot line or the 1 yard line, and went for it on the last play of the game. And the officials ruled. What did the officials rule? Was it? I can't remember where the officials ruled that y'all weren't set, or
no. Champ I think
The ball rolled out. Champ Henson grabbed
he
it.
fumbled, and it rolled into the end zone, and Brian Bassney recovered it.
Exactly.
And so there was, I think, I don't know whether they called touchdown.
Immediately at the end of the game, they did not call a touchdown, if I remember correctly.
They never did
because
call a touchdown.
you guys were told you lost.
Yeah.
And then Wayne Duke was the commissioner of the Big Two, who happened to be at the game.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a confab after the game. And then Wayne Duke came into the locker room to tell Woody Hayes.
That was what I was going to tell about.
You talk about guts, but go ahead though.
Yeah.
There was John Duke Wayne, and then there was Wayne Duke. Go ahead. Now.
It was like half hour or so after the game.
Yeah.
And we're all in there, and Coach, he's not happy, of course, and so it's funny. So Wayne Duke comes in, and he says, "Well, Woody, and that's all he got out of his mouth." And he actually attacked Wayne Duke and said, "You SOB, I knew you guys were going to F me and stuff." And then after he pushed him backwards, you want to talk?
No, you go.
After he pushed him back, slammed me up against the locker, he went back and got Nick Bonamici, and said, "Come on, we're going to kick their ass." And he
because their locker room was right across the way there.
Yeah.
In the old configuration at that Spartan Stadium.
I don't know how we prevented him, doing that, but that was our biggest. You talk about questionable call.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's others for and against us.
Yeah. Exactly.
That one definitely determined the outcome of the game.
Yeah.
And the outcome of the season.
National championship.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That was a hell of a team, man.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, you had some great adventures there. How did you and Woody, or how did you hook up with that graduate assistant job? Do you remember what you went through? Because I know you wanted tooth and nail, worked your way to try to get that situation. How did it come about?
Well, back then, and they were talking, say, 69, 70, and at that range, anybody could help recruit. And I started helping, God was I blessed, with Coach Dick Walker, and also Coach Ed Firkney. And I became friends with them, actually, out in the street, and I always loved Ohio State. And so I started helping them recruit, and was successful. And I got to know Coach Hayes. And in 72, for a couple of years of doing that, I went to Coach Hayes and said, "I'm not happy. I was in the finance business doing really well. I had a company car, all that stuff. And I said, I'm not happy, and I want to be a football coach. That's what I want to do." And he said, "Come and help me coach."
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the beginning. And we ended up, I tell you, my last high school coaching job was at Mansfield, Malabar. And I got a police escort out of Mansfield.
To the city limits.
And 5 weeks before the school year was out. And the first person I went to see was Coach Hayes. And I went in, and I had a letter from the superintendent and stuff. And the secretary always sat outside his office. And I said, "It's Coach Hayes." Yeah, I'd like to talk to Coach Hayes. And he heard my voice. He said, John, come in here." So I went in and I sat down and I handed him that letter. And he looked up at me and he says, "Damn, man, your temper's worse than mine." But I said, "No, it's not. Coach Hayes had the greatest temper ever."
Yeah, yours is right. Yours is pretty good though. Yours
I know,
is
but wow. I mean, this guy was.
Yeah, his could flip on
He'd
like
go
that.
into another world.
Yeah. So boom, y'all were hooked up.
Oh, we love that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah. But you got to be behind the scenes with one of the great college football coaches, one of the great coaches
made a difference
in history.
Yeah.
I asked you a while ago for some anecdotes and stuff, but just in a nutshell, give it to me short. What just stood out about him the most? Was it his attention to detail? Was it his relationship with people, with players, knowing how to get the most out of them one way or the other, from an agitation standpoint or a cajoling standpoint? What just stood out about him that made him, you think, the special person he was? as a coach?
Well, he was able to, people knew that he cared about them. And the players, that's a big thing. I mean, it makes such a difference, but I go back to his compassion, to his going to Riverside hospitals and visit people. See, a lot of coaches, when we beat Michigan, that comeback victory, they had roses and stuff, and he took them to Riverside Hospital and give them to people.
Yeah.
He wasn't partying. He wasn't, I mean, he was a great person. A lot of people didn't see that side of him.
Yeah.
They seen the temper side.
They saw the Gator Bowl.
Yeah.
They saw the Rose Bowl and the cameraman. They saw the tearing up the yard line markers. You're exactly right. They saw him ripping his cap apart, throwing his watches on the ground, his cheap watches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or doing things crazier than that. But to add back to that story, after I told him his temper was worse than mine, he said, "Well, my man, what do you want to do now?" And his loyalty, the people, he'd fight for you. There's no question about that.
Yeah, that carried through.
And that created that response where people would fight for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And the pay forward philosophy was just, all of his former players just lived by that, and carried that forward for one another term.
The greatest brotherhood.
Yeah.
I say that it's like I say, if you have power, you can use it to do great things, or you can use it to do evil things. And we know people who do both.
Yeah.
And I utilize my power. I get up every morning and I try to help people who, as John said, really need help, kids and adults. And it's inspiring for me to be able to do that. And my power, in a sense, is I can call Archie Griffin, or I can call Urban Meyer. I can call a lot of people and say, "Hey, I need your help to do this," and they're like, "Let's do it."
Yeah.
So it's not one individual making things happen. I'm real happy about that. I have a fighter. I have another world champion fighter who's fighting here March the 4th.
Yeah, I want to get on that. Yeah. Who is this young man?
His name's Alonte Green. He's from Cleveland, east side of Cleveland. Had an outstanding amateur career. Finished third in the Olympic trials as a heavyweight, and now he's a cruiserweight. He's a great 200-pound athlete.
Yeah. He's going to be fighting when?
March the 4th at the Hollywood Casino.
Hollywood Casino, west side of Columbus.
Especially you Cleveland people. Y'all ought to come everybody ought to come and support him. But
yeah, that's a cool little room, though, that you're fighting in there, isn't it?
I mean, it's a great place to have a fight.
I don't want to get into too much. People know the story about Buster Douglas and stuff like this, but before Buster Douglas, you got into the boxing game. What told you that you knew anything about boxing?
Well, I grew up in West Virginia.
That says it all. Red jacket, West Virginia.
We were raised to fight.
Yeah.
My famous quote from my mom is, "Get a rock." She's like, "Somebody mess with you, you can get a nice rock." Crack them for the rocks. I said, "Ooh, I don't want."
You're not allowed to bring that into the ring, though, are you?
Don't want no more than that. But and it's really funny, when you think about Buster and talking about how his mom, he let someone bully him one day on the way home from school, and told his mom about it. And his mom says, "Look, you either go out there and whip him, or you go out to fight me." And that's kind of the way, So we were involved in boxing. I got involved in the amateur boxing here in Columbus, 1964, with a great friend and guy, former high state player, Lee Williams. And I loved it. I love fights. I love fighting. I mean, I pick fights every day with people over different things.
Is it amazing, though, to you, though? You got into basically what I call the managerial side of it. Is it amazing to you that you took Steve Gregory was in Copenhagen, Denmark, right?
He fought for the world championship.
Fought for the world title. A guy from Columbus, Ohio, fought for the world championship. Did you think you would? That was what, 1979,
1979,
right? Did you think you would ever get back to that height? did you ever think you'd get back to those heights with a boxer?
I knew I was.
Because it's very few gyms is, even Kronk, way back when, very few of them had guys just continually step up and fight for world championships and stuff. But you were able to like steer at least two guys. Buster had 2 shots at a world championship. First, of course, he loses to Tony Tucker. What was that? 1988, I think, in Las Vegas. And then, but you fought tooth and nail to get him another shot at it. But how tough was it, Steve Gregory, Buster Douglas, to get them those shots?
Well,
besides a lot of phone calls,
like being blessed with Coach Hayes. When I talked, Steve Gregory contacted me. He knew me. I was like head of the Amateur Boxing Association, and he contacted me and said he wanted to turn pro, and would I advise him or would I help him? And I actually talked to Pete Brown, Paul Brown's son, who was a great friend. God love him. He died a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we talked about it, and we said, hey, it's like who you learn from, And so I called Angelo Dundee, who had Muhammad Ali, and at that time had Ray Leonard. He was in Las Vegas and staying at the Hilton in Vegas, and Ray was fighting out there. And he didn't answer his phone in his room, but I left a message, and I said, Mr. Dundee, my name is John Johnson, and I have a young fighter named Steve Gregory, and I'd like to talk to you about working with us. And I said, if you have any questions about me, you call Coach Woody Hayes and I left Coach Hayes' number. A couple minutes later, he called me back. Not because I said about that, I had this young fighter, it's also because I said, hey, call Coach Hayes. Most everyone, him, Don King, when you first meet him, they're like, I want to get my picture taken with Woody Hayes. And when I went into Coach Hayes and said, hey, will you take a picture with Don King for me? He said, Don King? I ain't taking no damn picture with Don King. But then he did.
It's because he loved you so much.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is you had to have hookups, and you understood that, Well, did that just come naturally to you? Because, you have always been a people person in one form or another.
Yeah.
You've always been a people person. When did you realize that it wasn't just how good a boxer you had, but it was how good a hookups you had that got these guys their shots?
Yeah, it's kind of who you know rather than, but it's also what you know. And I wanted to. I was blessed. I learned from the best in Coach Hayes when it came to football, and that's what really changed my life with Ohio State. And boxing, I learned from Angelo Dundee and others. And then, there's so many times in your life that something happens or people especially come into your life. On April 7th, 1984, what am I talking about? I got a call from Buster Douglas about helping him in his career. And Stevie had retired in 81.
Yeah.
And I was doing high school football coaching in that time period. And I was very excited when I got the call because I knew Buster from the time he was young, and I knew he had great ability and talent. And I tell Lance Green, the fighter that I have now, that he has Buster's ability and talent and so on. And his response, which I love, is, Coach, I'm better than Buster. Yeah. This kid's for real. This kid.
Well, I believe he's for real.
And Buster was. If Buster would have trained, the way he should have.
Oh, dude,
he'd been hard to beat.
I've told everybody, once he got his act together, when you guys, everybody was involved. JD McCauley, bless his heart. And I guess some others were involved too. I'm not sure they were as involved as you and JD McCauley. But the bottom line was, once he got his act together and he trained, he looked like an outside linebacker. When he was training up here at the Westerville, what was the name of the place? I'm trying to remember. Fitness Trend. Yeah, in Westerville. And he would do these sprints and runs and stuff. You go, man, this guy, wow, what a specimen. course, his mom died before you guys headed for Tokyo. He had to take a little time off there, obviously to agree, but then you wondered whether that fight was going to be in him. And in fact, it enhanced the fight in him, as he said later. But, we've just had specials done on it, all these kind of things. I caught some acclaim because I actually picked Buster to beat Mike Tyson. I said, this is, if Buster can avoid getting knocked out, of course, you always got to throw that in there with Mike Tyson because one punch could change everything. But if he could stay away from him, I saw this happening. And the reason I wrote that story was because we were sitting over there in Tokyo, and you and JD, but especially you, were telling me about all the ways y'all had scouted Mike Tyson. The whole key was Buster stepping in there and throwing jabs, et cetera. But you gave me that blueprint of how Buster was going to beat him. And I wrote about that the day of the fight. And I said, yeah, that's plausible because Buster, in great shape, is as good a fighter almost as you've ever seen. Am I right about that?
Yeah. I remember when we were in Tokyo, you coming into my room and saying, well, what's going to happen?
Well, I needed to know, man.
What's going to happen?
I'd flown halfway around the world to see this thing,
And I said, Buster's going to beat his ass.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But he didn't just say that. He told me and showed me why. He showed me, for example, they scouted this fight like a football, like getting ready for a football game. It showed that if he hit Tyson in the face or hit him, he would sort of stop. You showed me this. And he goes, so he stopped. You hit him again because he's not used to getting hit. But the Frank Bruno fight was a great example. Frank Bruno hit him, but he was afraid to step in there and hit him again. And finally got knocked out. I think in the 5th round, Frank Bruno did. But you guys fought on the undercard of that fight out in Vegas in that little Hilton Convention Center. And I remember I was out there because you guys were fighting on the undercard, and I remember watching that fight, and it was cool how y'all put all that together. But then it finally comes to that moment of truth of a guy, boxer, in his underwear and boots and gloves on, going out and getting it done and stuff. To this day, do you still marvel at the courage of a Buster Douglas to step into a ring like that and to follow through on the game plan?
I think
because it's so much like football in a way.
That's it's like football intensified about 1,000 times.
Yeah,
because the athlete has a cup on and some gloves, and he's going to fight for 3 minutes. And if you think that's easy, then just do anything for 3 minutes
before a break. Yeah.
And then there's no substitutes, there's no timeouts, and the object is to render your opponent unconscious for at least 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And I would like thinking, I've always said J.D. McCauley was the key because he put us together. Buster Douglas went to J.D. McCauley and said, I want to restart my career. What do you advise me to do? And he said, I'd call Johnny Johnson. And that's how we all got together.
Yeah.
And J.D. was
J.D. bless his heart.
He was just great. God love him. It hasn't been too long ago. It's been a couple of years now that J.D. died. But yeah, he was he was special. He was a great coach.
Yeah.
Great inspiring.
But then past that, I want to get back. How much courage does it take to step into a ring, like you just said, with nothing on but your smile, your cup, your boots, and gloves, and to fight a guy with the reputation of a Mike Tyson?
Well, I'd really like to think that we had the greatest thing about coaching that you end up doing is being able to transfer your mind into an athlete that can do it.
Yeah.
And that's why, I think that we knew what we needed to do, like you said, physically, to where we wanted to punch in a V, stay up the middle, as Mike came from the outside.
Yeah.
Mike had great hand speed, power. His feet were not great. And so we utilized this. I mean, Buster Douglas was a junior college All-American basketball player, right? He was a great athlete. Yeah. And he used his athleticism, and we kept in control of the middle. And, like now I call it with Volante, I call it a missile. If you think of a missile and how fast it travels, and you throw the jab and Mike slips it, And then you throw the right hand and he slips it because Mike is doing this constantly.
Yeah.
And then you come back up the middle like it's a missile with the impact and hitting it like a missile, rather than, because people are taught to hook off your right hand. So people protect. We told Buster, kiss your right hand, kiss your right hand. Because Mike had a tremendous hook.
And uppercut.
Yeah. Anything he hits you with.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what happened, we slip. And then when Mike was cocked, so the hook, bam, straight right up here. And we planned it. I mean, we worked on it. And Buster Douglas went into that fight and they
executed it.
Yeah.
The only time he slipped was when he got a little bit, in the 8th round. And all of a sudden, the great thing I've always said about Mike Tyson is that to me is a sign of greatness when you're getting the hell beat out of you and you still almost save the day. And he threw that uppercut. Buster went down. Just give people an idea. You're sitting there briefly, give them an idea. You're sitting there and you're watching all this work, all these dreams, all these things. And all of a sudden Buster is on the floor. He's on the canvas. He's been knocked down by Mike Tyson with a severe uppercut. What was your immediate thought? Like, boy, well, at least we gave him a run, or was it get up? Well, of course it was get up.
It was one, he was across the ring from us. And so I didn't see the punch land, but I seen Buster coming back towards us and hit on the canvas. And at that time, as crazy as this was, I kind of, Johnny, my son was sitting right, and I kind of looked back at him for whatever reason. And my thought was, I'm proud of him, no matter what happens. And then when I seen him roll over and hit the canvas, so I knew that he had his
faculties.
His mind was okay.
Yeah.
And then when he got up, the bell rang almost immediately. And when he came over and he sat down, I started yelling as loud as I could yell. He's going to come like hell. You understand? He's going to come like hell.
Yeah.
And knowing Mike, and I felt he had to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, technically, he was doing everything that he needed to be doing. And
one slip up.
You said that 9th round was
ninth round's the greatest round of heavyweight boxing I ever saw. I don't know about you. Just saying that gives me chill bumps right now because it was like a hurricane coming ashore with Mike Tyson coming across the ring there.
Yeah.
Buster withstood it. And then about 20 seconds into that round, it totally changed.
Yeah.
And the world started to change.
Yeah.
Because Buster took total control at the end of that round. Mike was not the same fighter he was at the beginning of that round, much less the fight. And you kind of went, oh my goodness, Buster, he's beating him up. He's beating up the bully. And then, of course, in the 10th round, he went out and knocked him out. I mean,
when Mike fell, he fell right in our corner. And I jumped up.
His mouthpiece is over here.
Yeah, I started saying, stay down, or yelling, stay down. And the referee's like, 1, 2.
Octavio Moran.
Whoa.
Yeah.
But when he got to 7, Mike reached over to get his mouthpiece, and I said, we won, and got ready to jump into the ring.
Yeah.
But I always thought we was going to make Mike quit. I didn't,
Yeah.
I thought we'll beat up on him for 7 or 8 rounds or whatever rounds.
Not used to this.
And he'll say, hey, I ain't going through this no more.
Yeah.
And I gained the greatest respect for him when he got up.
Oh, yeah.
He got up and started.
Oh, yeah. He was a champion. I mean, he was a champion for a reason. And to this day, he still makes money, off his reputation stuff. But I think he's totally underrated just as a person, a character in sports history, Let's get onto this real quick, though, before we move on. That launched Buster. Of course, then he loses to Evander Holyfield. We need to get into all that. We all know about the denouement that happened there and stuff. Are you disappointed, though, that things just sort of unraveled after that? I mean, how disappointing was that for you to get a guy finally there, and then he gets a hold of the brass ring, and then with all of the pressures and everything that come with celebrity, things unraveled. How disappointing was that?
Well, it was devastating at the time when it happened, no doubt. But you have Coach Hayes used to say, for every positive, there's a negative, every negative, a positive, and there's certain things negative, and you say, well, what can be positive about that? Death, as an example.
Yeah.
Well, the only positive I can come with that is you had that person in your life for as long as you did. You had that great special love, and so on and so forth. So in the sense that with the situation, what happened with Buster is very much more positive than negative. But man, you have everybody. He had everybody. He was the most popular athlete in the world.
I know,
the
man.
next morning.
Yeah.
In the world after beating Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
And so we had, we had a major difference of opinion, and actually went 20 years without speaking to each other. But we're back. We're friends now.
Yeah.
And the positive way outweighed the negative.
Yeah. But that's great. Y'all got back together and stuff. And there's a respect there, I think, from both y'all. And like I always say, I've always given you tremendous credit for making that happen. But like I said, I've never, ever gone so far as to say you're the reason it happened, because Buster had to believe in it.
He had to get in the ring.
But that's what got me about y'all's relationship was it's like coaching a football team. You got to get people to believe they can do something, but then also get them to put into work to get it done. That something becomes habit, instead of, oh my goodness, what is this? And that's where I gave y'all credit. Y'all totally prepared him for that fight. I mean, from almost every angle. You look back on that as a major accomplishment, right? I mean, I know you do, him winning the championship, but just the way y'all all prepared for that fight. Y'all went into that thing as an underdog, definitely, but you knew what you had going for you, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, most everyone, as you know, thought it was impossible, but I don't think I said I start with JD because he put us together, and then Buster, and I want to think that the three of us felt that, hey, we're going to go beat his ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as I told you in Tokyo a couple of days before the fight. And the other thing is, if you remember, Buster got real sick in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Really sick.
Yeah.
When he called me that morning, and I don't know, it was 4 or 5 days before the fight or something, I knew the fight had to be called off because his voice was so bad. And we got the doctor there at the Grand Palace where we were staying in Tokyo, and he loaded him up with antibiotics. And when I knew for sure was the night before the fight when he shook out in front of the elevators.
Yeah, I just got chills again because I watched that. I'm standing there with you and JD and Johnny, and watched the sparring partners and who else was over there? But there was a whole group of people there, and I just went, oh my goodness, this guy, he's on another level. This guy's on another level. Yeah. I've watched him fight probably 15, 20 times, maybe more than that. He's on another level. You got the same idea, right?
Yeah, I followed him down. We had the 9th floor of the hotel, all of us, and I walked down to his room, and he sat down. He had a broken eye, sweat and stuff. And I said, "How you doing?" He said, "I'm doing great." Wow. And I knew right then that we were going to beat him. What's funny is,
ladies and gentlemen, is the fight started here at 10:30 at night on HBO, which meant it started at 12:30 in the afternoon in Tokyo. And this was a matinee kind of fight, but Buster got it done. Hey, I want to ask you one last thing about that whole thing. You had to fight. You had to fight for the champion. You had to fight to get the fight. Then you had to fight to get the championship from Mike Tyson. Buster did. Then he had to fight to hang on to it. Did any of that taint? Did the latter part of that, with the whole Don King protest and them reviewing things, et cetera, did that taint the experience for you? Were you flying back? Because we were all on the same Japanese Airlines 747 coming back. Remember, had that upper level. And but were you worried that this was going to be taken from you guys?
No, they because that day after the fight, I was in the hotel room, and someone called. I think it was Peyton Share, and said, "Hey, they want you to come to a meeting with the organizations and Don and Mike and so on and so forth."
Yeah.
And I said, "F them."
Yeah.
That's what I said. F them. You know, the whole world
He didn't
knows
say
who-
F.
That's one of my
No,
favorite,
no, it's good.
favorite words.
Thank you. Yeah, no
but-
kidding.
But yeah, I think the
Yeah.
world knew who won.
Exactly. You know, that's the
Yeah.
point. That's the one I want to get to.
Yeah.
The world knew what happened, no matter what you
Yeah.
think happened,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, John, one last thing. Give one more plug to this fight that's coming. Do you feel like this kid can go the distance? And as boxing, I don't know, doesn't seem to have the same allure, but it seems to be coming back. But it doesn't seem to have the same allure that it did back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, at least when I was covering it. Maybe that was the difference.
Yeah,
I was covering it. But do you feel like boxing's coming back? And does this kid have a chance at a world championship?
Yeah, no doubt. He's lightning quick.
What's his name again?
Alante Green.
Alante Green.
He's I say Alante equals greatness. There's athletes have different amount of ability or potential.
Yeah.
In all sports.
Yes.
And Buster had great potential. He had great, and as I said, I tell Alante, he has Buster's ability. He has everything that Buster had, and his response, which I love, is, "Coach, I'm better than Buster." And that's his attitude. I mean, we got a great team of people. Troy Speakman does the promotions, and he's a very energetic guy. And we got a partnership in Chicago with Bobby Itz. We're great trainers. Just guys and that's what it takes. It takes a team of people.
Yeah.
If no one person does it.
Yeah.
And we got the athlete. And so if you want to see a great athlete, and I know all you appreciate, especially you Cleveland people, y'all should be out there supporting this kid. But also
locally,
you want to see a potential world champion. Now in the cruiserweight division, he's going to have to be at his absolute best to beat some of those guys. Whoa.
Yeah.
There's some really great you think 200-pound athletes, how good an athlete is it? And that's what these guys are. But at his best, he can beat them all. He can flat beat them all. They can't, like Buster could have beat them all, which he did.
Yeah.
In a sense with Mike Tyson, because nobody beat him.
John Johnson, thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to do this for a while. And, and the thing I like to say too, is like when I was covering Buster, but then even after that, Alexander Zolkin, I think got about as far as he could get, the Russian and stuff. I talked about we were going to write a book together if he ever won the world championship from red jacket to red square.
Yeah.
You would have made the rounds, but I got to go a lot of places covering these guys with you. But what I really appreciated about you was like when we're sitting in that bungalow at the Mirage Hotel back in 1990, and everybody's coming from everywhere to try to get you to do that Evander Holyfield Douglas fight, and promoters, et cetera. And you were in that back bungalow back there. I think Dolly Parton had stayed in the same bungalow before. But my point was, you let me in there, when there were meetings going on and stuff behind the scenes and stuff. And I totally wanted to tell you how much I really appreciated that, because it's rare that you get, as a sports writer, you kind of hear it from other people, It's rare that you get to be behind the scenes when the crap is going on.
If you're getting,
it is like making bologna, ladies and gentlemen.
If you're getting into a knockdown, drag out fight with Don King, you want some witnesses.
Yeah. And I witnessed it, ladies and gentlemen. It was, and this man stood his ground, and I won't get into the whole thing. I've told that story before, but, and then he goes, I'm sitting in that bungalow, and you came down and you went into the bedroom and you lit up a cigarette, and then you turned at me and you winked. And I went, oh my goodness, this guy's got Don King right where he wants it. Mm-hmm. And finally, but John Johnson, Ray, I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you. You've been had great impact on our careers of my fighters. And we've had some great
times together.
Memories together, monumental memories. I always tell Tim, fight in Tokyo was the greatest sports story he ever covered.
Yeah.
The Ohio State games, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some
Bobby Riggle winning Indy.
For a long time he's covered a lot of things, but I guess that, because of it was so unexpected in a sense, but he was like a part of our team. And I think maybe we even convinced him.
Yeah, you did.
That Buckbuster, I guess, going to be like Tyson.
Even though Jeremy Shapp and them left it out of that documentary, I wish they, thought that was the only reason.
Not the 1 to 42-1. You did all the
Oh
talking.
no, but they left out the part that I picked Buster to win the fight. You know what I mean? And that they said the only guy that believed in him was a cab driver from stupid Las Vegas who bet on him at 42-1. Still though, totally appreciate it. And I want to ask one last thing before we go. Are you worried about college football right now? You invested time, effort, and so
I'm happy about.
About the way things are going. The transfer portal.
Yeah, I'm happy about. There's a combination there of where those kids can make some deserved money.
Yeah,
because you could say what you want, man. When you go out on the football field and you step across that white line, you're going to get hit.
Yep.
And you're going to have to hit people, and there's always that danger of something happening. And I think people should be compensated.
I agree.
I think 100%. We ought to tell, what we ought to do? We ought to pay teachers, right? Yeah. I used to be a teacher once. We ought to pay them like babysitters. We would agree that they babysit these kids, right? They babysit.
Yeah.
You take them there and you leave them there for so many hours, and they at least do that part.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing they try to do is they try to maybe teach them something,
Yeah.
So we pay them like babysitters, pay them $10 an hour per kid, and they'd all be making $250,000, $300,000 a year.
Yeah. And
which is probably
there would be people flocking to the profession instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
That's the thing about John Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. You noticed you start here, but then a tangent leads you here. You don't want to know where I got the term, but I digress. It came from this guy, but yeah, he makes some good points along the way. But by the way, what you just said about football, though, it reminds me of my old saying. I said I covered 3 sports really throughout my sports writing career, 3 main sports. It was boxing, football, and auto racing. I said 2 of them where they wore a helmet and 1 of them where they should. But because they were all alike. Once you stepped into the arena, whether it was in your cockpit of your car, between the lines or between the ropes, you were in jeopardy. You were in physical jeopardy. And even when you were practicing. And that's what sets those apart. But John Johnson, thank you very much for joining the Tim May podcast.
I appreciate it. And thanks for Frank Carsoni. Carsoni's right off the exit in Westerville. This is the first place that we came after the fight in Tokyo.
Yeah, that's right.
Is we came here to Carsoni's to eat because Frank helped feed us before.
Yeah. This idea that Buster Douglas went to Tokyo, nobody knowing who he was, that was it was kind of a joke because there were a lot of people pushing for him when he left, but backed up and stepped up and offered him support when he needed it the most. And Frank Carsoni and this group were one of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the Tim May podcast.
World Championship, 4 Rose Bowl, Big Ten championship rings.
Until next week, we'll see you then.
Wait a minute.
There's one more.
All right.
Gold
pants, 3 pair. And then that one there, Nick Bonamici's sister made that cross for me. Wow. I'm going to get a bigger one.
Wow.
Jesus said, acknowledge me publicly.
Nick Bonamici is a guy I'd like to get on my podcast. I may do that.
Yeah.
I remember interviewing him a couple of times, but he was one of those guys that was like, but he was also a character. I mean, he was an icon to a certain extent. I remember moving up here in 1976, but I knew of him before that because I knew about Ohio State football living in Texas and stuff, but he was just a name that resonated, right? But also the way he played.
He backed up the name.
Yeah.
He was like, and I think he was like the Bosa's.
Yeah.
As far as his remember
presence.
Watching in the Southern Cal game, and he was just a freshman. Yeah, I tell you, you got some great Bonamici story, but 2 or 3 guys tried to block him. it's like watching, Nick and Joey today. Everybody, and he was relentless. He was a great player.
Hey, we'll come back. We'll do some more memories, man, with you, because those are some great characters, great players back then. But you were involved with Ohio State football all the way through. I mean, you stayed friends with certain players, et cetera, like Sean Springs, for example, and stuff. You had great relationships.
Yeah.
But you know what? Right now, we got to cut it off.
All right.
But ladies and gentlemen,
next time we're going to talk about charities and helping people that really need your help, and kids that really need your help.
That's the great thing about John, is he takes over whatever he gets into. He takes over the situation, just like the Tim May podcast. He's setting the agenda. By the way, thanks to Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, and Ryan Day, these gold pants have sort of become trinkets. Have you noticed that?
Oh man!
I mean, there's a lot in circulation now, man. Exactly. Hey, until next time, this is Tim May for the Tim May podcast. We'll see you then.